Okay, well, firstly, obviously, I'm not in a position to discuss budgets or anything because I haven't actually seen them. Maybe it's stupid not to have done that, but I think you need to see where the waste is. I mean, there's bound to be areas of waste in the union and they need to be cut. I hate to sort of stand on the platform of cut, but I think areas of waste need to be looked at. I'd also look and see where we can get other funding. I mean, it's going to be quite interesting to see what what funding this coffee shop brings in when we actually get that in the guild and see if that does have any sort of financial gain for us, really. I also want to see an overhaul of the shop because I think we could be putting things in there that would really sell and bring more money into the guild. And also events. I mean, we need to make sure that we are making money out of these events. And I know the uni's a non-profit organisation, but we need to make sure that the money that does go in gets put back into student support and areas like that, really, and improving the guild, making it better for students.
Absolutely, I agree with that. My plan for this is to develop a long-term business plan for commercial services to ensure that we have financial sustainability for our guild over the coming years. So, if I'm elected, I'm not going to just work for a year and then go. I'm going to leave the university with a plan to develop its commercial services, find new revenue and funding streams in the future, and so that we can ensure that we continue to make money. Because at the end of the day, whatever you think about cuts and people, and the university block grant, we still need to fund what the union does. And at the moment, commercial services is sort of just funding itself, when actually we've got other more important things that we need to deal with, like student welfare.
Yeah, Kay mentioned waste sort of in the guild. Problem is we've already been through quite a few series of redundancies amongst the staff. In a way, there may still be a bit of waste in there, but not much. We can't keep, in a way, there's sort of not anything left to cut. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, basically there's not much left to cut. We've already been through a series of redundancies over the last few years to cut costs. It's only so far you can keep getting rid of staff to try and keep core services going. As said, we rely on the commercial services arm to sort of fund the rest of the guild, except at the moment it's dropped down. Obviously, we need the long-term plan, which we're all going to agree on, but we need to make sure students start caring about guild again. We need to get them along there. It shouldn't be closed on any night of the week. It should be busy during the day. There's enough students living right next door to it. We need to try and make sure that students in town can get up there easily as well. In a way, we need to make sure students care about their guild again, because if they start caring about it, they'll start spending money there.
So just following on from your point.
I think Ben was about to interject just before I asked you to raise your voices, but I'd like Ben to be able to speak to continue that interjection.
I was just going to raise the point that staff waste is definitely not going to happen further to the point that it already has happened. The figure that I always whip out on this point is the fact that 10 years ago the guild had 42 members of staff, and now we've got 21. So that amount of cut and where services have fallen by the wayside at the same time is a really big issue. Can I come on with you about this question? I think since you mentioned if we don't get a block grant raised, we do need to look really hard at our commercial services and the sort of nights that we're offering. At the same time, we can't simply say that ENTs are going to sort everything, especially with 9k fees coming in. Chances are that a lot of students are not going to be willing to go out as much and spend as much money on nights out and beer. So we need to be looking at really innovative methods of getting money in, and something which can be quite crucial to this is using student volunteers to run a lot of the commercial services things and to get them involved a hell of a lot more than they already are. Not only will this, if there's one place where we could potentially put down on staff, it would be to shift away from having an ENTS assistant, which purely just manages space but poorly puts out posters and poorly puts out flyers, something which a group of students I'm sure would relish the opportunity to do. Not only would it help the guild, but it would help them by improving employability skills. And at the same time, I think at the moment SMB as a department is really small, but I think there's a lot of room there for it to expand into something really good. And if we're looking at other student union models like Queen's in Belfast and Manchester, really driving a lot of enterprise work and looking into EU funding and the way that we can get spaces where students can come in and run business ventures that they've got on a small set of costs using EU funding, and then go out and actually bring that money into their own guild and giving them a real sense of sort of ownership over things. So I think going down that whole route of letting students volunteer and using enterprise and letting them use really innovative methods will really help as well as potential partnership.
But that, to follow on from your point, you know, we've got the School of Business Management, but we've also got the Computer Sciences Department. I don't know who's designed the new website. I would assume it would be someone who's been paid to do that. No? No?
Volunteers.
Why haven't... Okay. Why don't we give it to the Computer Science Department as a club? You know, this is what I'm saying. Okay, fair enough. That's why I suggested.
In terms of the website, that's a really good example. You know, we went out and it's finding the balancing act that we need as students and volunteers, because at the end of the day, students come to university primarily to learn, and in no way as a guild do we want to start throwing so much stuff at them that their education starts to falter because of that. The issue we've had, and you know, I would much like to have seen the website come into action months and months and months ago. We got a volunteer to design the whole thing, and we can have 2 computer science students who are working on to get it on the website. But when they've got projects coming in on a week by week basis, I would rather they concentrate on them rather than trying to get a guild website on the go. But even saying that, we've just managed to speak to the computer science department. I mentioned this at Hustings earlier about getting a year in employment scheme in the guild, so that we can get a computer science student all year, and we can run that on a year-by-year basis to make sure that there is constantly someone in the guild looking after the website, developing it, looking at new ways in which we can communicate and interact with students. And I think...
Is that going to be a paid position, though?
Yeah.
Well, why not create a computer science, a union website club, which is run through computer sciences, that...
The issue is...
And you spread the workload there.
Again, the issue with volunteers is, great as they are, they've always got other work commitments with universities.
And what I'm saying is we spread the workload as thinly as possible across so many people. Yep. Oh, well, I was just saying, you know, let's spread the workload as thinly as possible. We've got 9,000 students at this university. Let's get 9,000 people involved in our union, and then the work for one person would be, you know, a very small amount. It's your union. Let's get involved.
I think you raise a very good point, but I would say that, say we've got 300 computer science students who are all avid in, you know, making websites, there'd be a high possibility then that you would come back with 300 different websites that they all wanted to make. And that happens with various other things. This was the issue with, you know, entertainment. We've looked forward at setting up an entertainment committee, and the only way that it needs to be it will work is if it's run in a way that we ask students what sort of nights they want, and say we ask all, you know, nearly 10,000 students in Aberystwyth. Sorry, yeah, the issue would be that they come back with 9,000 different nights.
Anyway, Ben's going on point about having too many people interested in doing stuff. At the moment, we have almost no one interested in doing stuff. We need to get more people involved in doing it. As I said, there's plenty of work that can be done. We need to spread the workload and not just say, oh God, we've got too many people, we can't do anything. I think we do need a proper events committee, not just to run events for the guild, but to try work with societies to make their events in the guild better run and better advertised beyond just their own membership, so that they can do better all the way through the year. We really need to work on getting, we need to work on getting students into the union. I mean, it's top priority if we're going to survive.
I think we need to run a survey really and find out what's actually working and what's not working, because at the moment I've spoken to quite a few students who are saying, oh, this night's sort of, you know, reload for example, they're saying, oh, reload's good, but we like to do it once a month or something like that. And I think we need to make sure that we are sort of going for what they want.
I mean, we've just run a survey, so that's something that I implemented this year, and it's something that hasn't been done in over a decade. Which, when I asked our general manager, you know, when was the last survey that happened, and he whipped out the fact that not in case of lifetime as a general manager in the guild, it shocked me the fact that we can be an organisation that's here to provide services and support and opportunities for students, yet we've never actually gone out and asked them what they want. Makes no sense. And linking it back to entertainment and stuff, a lot of comments did come up regarding. And you know, that's stuff we can work on. So I agree.
So the next question is going to be to James. James, this is quite a long question. So do your best to try and hold the thoughts in your head.
Yep.
So, under existing university rules, there are strict limitations on the powers and influence of student representatives on university committees and decision-making bodies generally. For instance, the statutes concerning the University Council, which is, for most of you who don't know, which is sort of the one of the top governing bodies in the university. That statute states, and I quote, "Student members of the council shall not be entitled to receive any papers or attend or participate in any meeting or part of a meeting concerning any business of the council which it shall, in its discretion, determine should not be shared with student members." What I want to ask you is this: how far are you prepared to go to change this situation in order to give student representatives more power?
Right, well, that's interesting. The quote there, for those of you who don't understand that speech, is basically the university can decide when they want to hear from student representatives. So if we want to say something to them that they might not like, they can not allow us to be at that meeting. That's wrong. No two ways about it. How would I...
How far are you prepared to go?
Okay, how far am I prepared to go? I think as far as reasonable, actually. I think it's important. Yeah, I'm not going to start firebombing old college because they won't let me into a meeting. But to not let us be part of the university, which we pay fees to come to, we are essentially the customer of this university. And it is part of our lives for 3 years. Now, I'm sorry, but that's how it is at the moment. We pay money and they provide us with the education. We should have a say in how they run it, what they think, and what they do. And for them to be able to turn around and say, well, no, we don't want to listen to you, yeah, I think that's wrong. And, well, I hope they don't enact that very often. How far would I be willing to go? Well, student activism, people have said student activism is dead. I don't think it is. I think if we get enough people that are passionate about something, and there is passion out there, there is. I think if we get enough passionate people together, we could do things. Protests, sit-ins, good old 1960s student activism.
Well, anyway, James said the basics, but as getting students know what's going on, I expect by mentioning the University Council here, it's probably more than double the amount of people who have heard of it. Students need to know it exists and sort of know what it decides on so that they can have a say on it. You can't just leave it up to a few people and pushing for their efforts. You can get the student body behind it, engaged, as James has said. You need to make sure that the students get angry over this, that they make their voice very loudly heard. And with the new Vice-Chancellor, I believe it will be a lot easier than the old one, who was not keen on involving students, according to a previous president, well, two actually. We need to make sure students know what's going on before we can do anything.
Anyone else want to speak to this question?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one really, and I think the statutes of the council actually a lot of them are just sort of bureaucratic waffle, and a lot of the stuff that actually happens in council is a hell of a lot different. This year it's been quite interesting during my time as president to highlight the fact that as a guild we are a critical partner, and both of those words are key in that statement, in the fact that yes, the university needs to understand that we're there to represent the rights of students, and if they do something that isn't to the benefit of students, then we're going to hurl all kinds of crap in their direction. But at the same time, we're also partners, and with partners comes a lot of trust with that, and we need to trust the university, and they need to know that we trust them, but at the same time, they need to trust us. And it's finding that balance, and it's treading a very thin line. There was an incident recently with a leaked document, which I won't go into, but basically that sort of slammed down the vault of the university, because we'd spent 6 months building up a trust relationship with them, and we've gone completely behind their backs on something that was indirectly related to students, but we could have said in a more elegant fashion. And I think it's just important to know that yes, we need to be a critical partner, but I think if we stand on our own doorstep constantly pelting and hurling abuse at the university, then it's no way to work in an organisation when theoretically we're all in it for the same goal, which is to create the best student experience in Aber. And I think it's important that we work with the university as much as possible, really.
So I disagree with Ben on that point about you obviously need that good working relationship, but you need students to know what's going on, especially when it's going to affect them directly and often in big ways. Often you may have talked to the university, and if they're not being too cooperative, then yes, you should leak stuff. You should make sure students know. You shouldn't go and you shouldn't go and sort of dob the person in who did it, for example. You should support them as a member of your team. Students need to know what's going on. Basic.
And I don't think there's an environment where students aren't being told what's going on, like you said. The April and UBC is. You can quite easily laugh, Richard, but you know,
Talk to
I've
students.
Let that be first.
Sorry.
As president this year, we've been trying to communicate a hell of a lot more with what is actually going on internally. But I think it's also you've got to understand that if the university are doing nothing wrong that I think is disaffecting students, then there's no point trying to latch and clutch at straws just for something to pick up and try and throw back at their face. I think you can't slam the university if they're doing nothing wrong. Which with the new VC, she's only pushing good boundaries for students at the moment, and I think it would be wrong to us to go into council and senate and any other government bodies of the university with the mindset that we're purely going to try and clutch at straws to grab anything that we can possibly use to trip up the university. And a better way to do it would be to work in partnership, and when they come up with an idea, say, well, actually, at the cold face, seeing as though we spend more time with students than you do, I think it would work better for this for students, and throw in ideas that maybe, you know, the 80-year-old council members that are on council in the university and have probably not seen students in a long time we can give good ideas for them.
Well, it's saying that we'd leak every single thing we talk about to the university's a bit odd. That's not at all what I was saying. I'm not sure how you interpret it that way. As I was saying, we need to have a good working relationship with them, but we also need to be willing to stand up and say no and tell students what's going on. As for transparency this year, it's worse than ever, to be honest. If you go around talking to students at the doors, they don't know what's going on. That's something we need to change. We need to improve communication massively.
I think I would argue against that with the fact that if you've been to any of the university Shape Our Future meetings that have been going on, that we've been trying to work with them in partnership to do, I think to be in a university where there are been sessions for months and months held where students can actually come in and give their views on the strategic plan of the whole university is something which you'll not find in many of the universities across the country.
I disagree as well with communication. I think there's been a problem with that. Door knocking, I found majority of students actually don't know what the guild is, let alone about the elections. Really. They know there's some sort of election, but that's all they know. They don't know what they're electing for.
Okay, I'm slightly on top of Mr. Sullivan. I'd like to, I'm actually going to move on this topic because we've gone through half an hour and we've got plenty more to go through. Okay, new question. I'm advised that you're struggling to hear me, so I'm going to stand up and read my questions and we say them a lot better if I possibly imagine. The next question is to Richard. Richard, what, for you, are the fundamental problems with regard to mental health provision in Aberystwyth University? And how likely is it that anything can be done about it?
Where to start? I mean, this is something that's a very personal matter to me. I'm someone who has suffered from depression for the majority of my life now. I've sort of been through all the different services that exist or tried to get them, and often it's not good. If you've got a problem that on a day, you don't want to be waiting a few weeks to get an appointment to see a counsellor. Although, despite the fact that there are emergency services, but you don't hear about them unless you dig really deeply, and when you're in that sort of mindset, you're probably not going to find them. It's something that we need to do better. We need to work with university better on this, with the local health board. It's something we need to find more money for somehow in the union. It's a top priority. We're quite isolated in Aberystwyth, which makes it much harder to say go home and decompress if you need to. It's something we really need to push. As I said, having experienced all the different services, often it's not enough, especially if it's sort of only a minor problem at that time, and you're just basically told, oh, there's people with far more serious problems, so we can't deal with you. We can't have that happening. Yeah.
I think it's interesting that you raised the point about the guild providing more services and getting money for more services. Something that's actually in the pipeline is moving the counselling services in the guild over to the university, and seeing as though we're the only university in the country where the student union runs the counselling services and not the university, I think this is quite a bold and possibly important step for counselling and mental health support in Aberystwyth. The fact that you know, it has as a service, it's not expanded and it's not had any development in a long, long time. That's merely because, you know, as we've discussed already this evening, the Guild is in a poor financial state and there's just no more money to pump into it there. But if we can lobby for the university, you know, they want to take that over into the new branch of student support that they're trying to build now. And if in the process of them doing that, we can lobby them to expand the department, I think that's fantastic. But and I think that also goes with a lot of the other support services that are offered either in the university or the Guild. I don't necessarily think that the Guild is the right place for professional support and the core support services to provide it. I think the university has a role to play in providing the core services, the core professional support services, whereas the Guild should be a place for advice. And that's where it needs. At the moment, there's a serious disparity between what the Guild does and what the university does, and what it needs to do is student support across the whole campus needs to dovetail in a way that the Guild operates advice, and then can also signpost effectively to the university. There is a lot of the fortress mentality going on between the two at the moment, which is actually causing more problems than benefits.
Guys, don't be afraid of points interjected. If you have something that you disagree with, I see sometimes expressions in your face that you disagree. You can allow a question and then someone to answer and go on. Don't be afraid of that. Who wants to speak next? Okay,
I think education is the problem here as well. We need to be educating people about mental health problems and how to deal with them. I mean, I had a friend last year who I seriously suspected was very ill with mental health, and I one day found that his room was empty and he'd left a suicide note. And it took me absolutely hours to actually get the resident tutors and student support to actually take, not the student support in the union, but other means, to actually take me seriously. And when they did find him, they found him with several knives on him. So he was very serious about what he was going to do. And it was really hard to get people to, like I said, take me seriously. It was a lot of, oh, you're being melodramatic, and, you know, a lot of sort of pushing away, and, oh, they'll come back in a few hours, and all this. So I think there needs to be greater education. And at the time, I only knew how to deal with it because I'd been reading about it. I think if I hadn't, I would have been quite upset and scared. So I think we need to educate people a lot better to understand and to look out for signs as well. I also think we need to work with Mind in town and get a series of sessions in the union. Like the recent one's been organised with suicide, and that was a really, really good idea. But also sort of counselling sessions where we can get a group of students together to talk to each other about their problems. And then you might help the waiting list then, because if students have something minor they can deal with there and then you know, that would assist. Because at the moment it's quite disheartening if you deal, like Richard said, if you have suffering with depression or anything like that, and you've been told you've got to wait 5 weeks for an appointment. I mean, that's not going to help you. Whereas if you've got a weekly drop-in session, someone can come along straight away and come and talk to you and talk to the support officer, and you can get a counsellor there as well.
James, do you want to say?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for everybody else to finish. I think that the fact that the university doesn't provide a mental health service is wrong. However, we've got to talk real now. The Guild has it, and there are problems with it, and that's wrong. We have a duty of care over our students whilst they are at university, and that comes from the university and the Guild. The Guild, as a group of members, as a group of students, we have, I think it's a responsibility to look after one another. You know, to be told you have to wait 3 weeks for a mental health appointment, it's just unbelievable. And I also found out that the counsellors are actually just counsellors. They're not mental health nurses. The feedback I've got is that you just go there to vent. Actually, what we need to be doing is we need to be helping these people rather than just giving them a space to vent. We need to have, you know, people from the Ceredigion mental health team, the NHS team essentially, come into our university. Why we've got 10,000 people here who are likely. Some people are likely to suffer from academic stress. It's a university. There is stress involved. And mental health. To be told that this university has one of the worst records on mental health is frankly shocking when we are such a community. Aberystwyth students is such a community. So yeah, if elected, I'm going to forge links with Mind Aberystwyth. I'm going to get in contact with the Ceredigion mental health team. The counsellors, they're great if you want to go and vent. I also want to get a mental health nurse in so people can be advised on the steps that they can take to get better.
Anyone else want to speak on this? No? Okay, we'll move on. Next question is back on the hand again, for Ben Meekin. Ben, again, re-elected, renew our membership of the National Union of Students, NUS, which costs, I'm told by a former student union president of this university, between 25 and 35,000 pounds annually?
It's a very interesting question. To sort of, it ties in quite well with the first question in the fact that all the stuff that's recently gone on, it's actually, I've asked this question myself. You know, I was quite an avid supporter of all the work that NUS have been doing, and I think it's a great body to be a part of. But to be also a part of an organisation, a national organisation that can quite easily vilify people at the same time has made me question the fact. But saying that, on the other hand, the amount of services and training that we receive from NUS for that fee is phenomenal. One of the things that I initiated this year was a complete review of the Guild because of the fact that commercial arm was failing, and you know we're just generally not doing very well as a Guild. What this involved was NUS coming in. We were only one of 5 student unions, I think, this year that received an NUS diagnostics check, which spent three days with NUS and an external consultancy company coming in, completely going through everything. And what that has meant is that we now have an outside perspective on the Guild and where all of its flaws are, which is really important in Aber, because the Guild, as much as everything else in Aber, can quite easily become a part of the Aberystwyth bubble. And once people are in there, it's very hard to see the problems outside of it. As well as that, the training that's received through NUS and just the general links to other student union offices across the country is a fantastic service. So I think, you know, there's a lot of things that we can do to battle the financial issues, but I don't think leaving NUS is an issue that we should be looking at, really.
I agree, to be honest. I would definitely continue to be a member of NUS. I think we stand louder as a group when we run our own. So with things like the tuition fees, I mean, we can make a better stand against the sort of condemned governments or for the tax on students if we're in a group as opposed to on our own. I mean, as Aberystwyth University, we won't really make much noise. And I do think we get more benefits than we do sort of negatives, really.
Well, I'd be standing as your representative. So actually it's not my decision, it's your decision. And I'm sure you people, you would make that decision. You know, I will present the facts to you and allow you to decide. We are a democracy. It's not a decision for the president whether our group of students, which is essentially what the Guild is a group of students that come together. You know, it's up to you who you're affiliated with. Personally, I think that the NUS give us brilliant services, brilliant links. So I would encourage people to stay in the NUS. But I can't, you know, this is all about opening up the Guild and letting you take a running part, well, no, take a lead in actually running it.
I've had quite a rocky relationship with the NUS. It's been very bad at some points. I've been to far too many NUS conferences where they often get far too political and it just devolves into bad debate, which doesn't help students. There was a very good chance of us having a referendum on our NUS membership a few years ago. It didn't happen in the end, which, looking back, is a good thing because, as everyone else has been saying, the support and training they offer is invaluable. We couldn't afford it, what they give us, for the sort of £26,000 a year otherwise, even if we had a full-time staff member, because of the wide area of expertise it covers. Also means that due to our size, we get quite a good deal on commercial services, which we probably wouldn't get ourselves. Especially. Oh, sorry. My voice keeps going down because my throat's sore. As I said, in the long term, the NUS is good for us. It may devolve into political infighting sometimes that has nothing to do with the student movement. But overall, it's good. It's worth being involved. It does make a difference to us here, even if we don't hear about it very often. But a lot of it's in the background, and in a way, it's one of the things that needs to be advertised better.
James, there was something that Richard said directly clashed with something that you said. You said he was glad there hadn't been a referendum in the previous year. Since
Yep.
that's your big thing,
Yep.
respond to that.
You know, the point that I made earlier, it basically applies here. It's a democracy. Nobody should be able to make executive decisions that dictate who this Guild is and isn't associated with. You should, you know, your members, you should have a leading decision on
To be
who
fair,
we're associated with.
individual students can opt out if they want to. So if there are students that are against NUS, they can choose to
When I say I'm glad it
opt
didn't
out.
But
happen,
do they want to?
We've seen that recently, haven't we? We have seen students opting out of it, so it can be done.
But do they want to opt out of the guild because we're associated with NUS and lose all its services? Or
Then we'd lose a lot of those services if we opted out of the guild as a...
I'm not saying that we opt out of NUS, and I'm not. What I'm saying is it's the students, our members, you guys. It's your decision.
I think what the point you raised is very valid, Shane, and I think it ties in quite nicely to something else that's going on during the election period, which is the referendum on the democratic system. And I believe that UWIC, or Climate Met, or whatever they call it now, that University of Wales is going to set up, was in a sort of similar model to the general meeting model that we're running at some point.
And let's not think it's on topic, and we have another question related to that.
All right, we'll bring that.
Yeah.
so can I just come back to my last point?
Sorry, Richard is right. I didn't let him. Go
Yeah,
on.
so when I said glad there wasn't a referendum, there was a lot of debate over this issue in GMs and between normal students and SAB and exec. I agree with a lot of the reasons that we shouldn't be in NUS, but at the same time I think the positives outweigh the negatives. And people who know me know I'll talk for hours on this over a pint.
Okay. I'm going to ask one last question before we go to a break. Right? To the speakers. Okay, so we're going to move these.
I don't know, just got the message.
So these are the questions today.
needs to be close to the speakers. So.
Okay, so how do I move them? Sorry? We'll sort it out quick, yeah. So one more question. Right, sorry about that. So I believe the next question is for Kay, am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you be, given the fact that you would be elected president of the Students' Union, right, representing the students, would you be willing to go public about underperforming fellow sabbatical officers, even if this underperformance had not yet reached the stage where formal removal is necessary?
I guess to some extent I do think so, because they're elected with the students, and as president you have a duty to hold people to account, I imagine. So that's a very hard question. I do think there needs to be more accountability with the guild at the moment. I think it's really difficult to call someone to account if you're having issues with them. But I don't know, because you're working as a team as well. I don't know, it's really
So this is sort of a core point of what I'm standing on. It's why I got a motion, the GM before last we passed a motion about SAB's reporting. I'd be reporting all the time on everything I'm doing as much as possible, and well, I can't force the other SABs, but I'd be making them do as much as possible, let people know what they're doing, even if it's going well, if it's going badly, so that, especially if it's going badly, so that students can start helping out. Because you can't just leave it up to the SABs and the exec to get on with stuff, especially because, well, issues tend to involve everybody. We need to make sure students are involved, because usually that means that the SABs then have a much better chance of achieving what's needed.
I don't know if that quite skirts around the topic of the question. Am I right in thinking that the question was if a member of this faculty was not sort of representing students and doing their job, as it were, would the president take a stance on that? And I think it is an interesting question. I think that if they would, the point raises the fact that if they weren't telling students what they were up to, then hopefully the students would find out that they weren't actually doing anything. But I think there also is a responsibility of the president but there's a responsibility of the team at the end of the day to turn around and say, someone's not pulling their weight, and to maybe, that might not mean going public and just throwing it out there that someone's not doing their weight and getting really angry about it. It might be more of the case that the president will sit down with that person and actually go back through their role and say, is this actually something that you need to be doing? Because people can stand for elections in the heat of the moment and fall into politics. It wasn't my life goal to be stood where I am now, and I sort of fell into it.
James.
There are two conflicting things here: loyalty and integrity. Loyalty to your team as a leader, that's extremely important. And then the integrity issue. As soon as it gets bad that students are suffering, the service that we provide is suffering because someone is not doing that, not doing their job properly, I would call them into my office, we would go through their role, and if this continued to happen, I'm sure it would be picked up on by the Courier or other students. I'm sure that would then be reported. But yeah, you know, actually I believe people stand for elections because they want to change something. So I'd be very surprised if an elected officer wasn't doing their job properly.
Yeah. So,
I'd love to spend more.
one last comment?
I'll let you have the last one.
Yeah, cheers again. No, so it's main reason I focus on the report angle, and so it's because you can't just leave it up to the president and say this SAB's doing a bad idea. You need the students to know what that SAB's doing, good or bad or nothing, so that they can actually bring it forwards and make it an issue.
Okay. We're going to go for a very, very quick break. Mainly for candidate, it's going to be about 2 minutes, so they have a chance to sit down, go to the bathroom, whatever it is. If you guys really need to go to the bathroom, you know, this is your opportunity to do so, but please make it really, really quick. We're going to start again in about 5 minutes.
You can't have 2 mics at once because the mic limits it doesn't.
Okay, should we move everyone in a bit?
Yeah.
Basically, let's get cozy.
No physical attacks.
It's the people there are fine, but
Yeah,
well, that people are probably heavy doing something. Try to speak up a bit as well, because it's you people saying you can't.
Yeah, loud.
yeah.
He's your big boy.
Check 1, 2, test.
The minute Kenny's back in here, we're going to start
Test, check 1, 2. Go this side. Test 1, 2, check, test 1, 2. Check.
I never actually left. I was next to we were on the wrong side as well, aren't we?
Yeah.
We were supposed to have been the other way around.
Oh, really?
It was meant to be him first, and you last me then.
Doesn't make any
They were
much
saying to me, and I was like,
difference,
no, you're wrong. You didn't.
Stop my position.
Me and you were wrong, and he was right, basically.
No, I said I was wrong.
Oh, okay,
So I was
me
thinking
and
stage
you were
left.
wrong, James is right.
Shall we swap now? I'm really confused. I'm Steve.
Guys, swap t-shirts. I just said we should swap T-shirts, and then that'll really confuse everyone.
The circumstances, I'd rather not take my top off. Especially due to...
We were going to reenact the first year, me and James for long.
It was only page 12.
It's ridiculous how bad it is. Spanish music.
Online, someone in Spain translated Wales on that.
That's ridiculous.
Two surprises.
I didn't like that last one. That last question.
The Senate what are you going to, how far is it going to take?
Offensive.
I was like, yeah, I'll go with fine.
I was waiting for someone to say the word occupation.
Well, I thought, student
Right, and what was the last question? NUS or?
NUS, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a big thing for me. It's not
Right.
Are we all right with the camera? Yeah. We're okay to go with the camera. All right. Remind me of the next questions for James.
Yeah.
Okay. James, this is the last of the practical questions that I'm going to ask, and I'm going to move on to the sort of more practical questions.
I get the first one.
And it is related to something that Ben said earlier on. What kind of general meeting reform, if any, would you push for were you to be elected?
As you know, there's a referendum at the same time as the elections. I encourage you all to vote on this. Whatever the outcome of the referendum, I want to work towards a model of democracy that is free, fair, accountable and representative. The problem with GMs at the moment is that nobody attends them, you know, and that's wrong. Again, we need to get a more representative system in. In terms of the assembly model, has anybody read the booklet? If you have, brilliant. But it is written in constitutional speak. It doesn't actually say in plain, clear English what the change will be. So yeah, we've got the constitution to change to, but I don't think people are all exactly aware of how the assembly model will work, and that's something that does concern me a little bit.
I think on the assembly model sort of thing, it's a difficult one. It's unfortunately it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation, because you need to get students engaged in order to consult with them about a model to move forward. But at the moment, as a guild in general, it's really hard to engage with people. The best way probably to let people know about a student assembly would be to have something on a decent website. But you go to our homepage on our website, and you can guarantee that most people spend 5 seconds on it and then flick off because they have no idea what to do with it. But I think the move towards the student assembly structure is not only it's trying to answer that problem as well at the same time. It's trying to get more students engaged, whilst at the same time moving towards a more representative structure. The current model is in no way fit for purpose. I think there's the argument that we should have tried to promote it better and trying to get more people in a room. But if we had, a GM that held 400 people in a room, that would be a very small percentage of the students that we have in Aberystwyth. And I think something that has a snapshot of the student body is a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, but it's only a snapshot. I mean,
there's never going to be a way.
I mean, I'm happy to accept the outcome of the referendum, and will work my absolute hardest to make sure that model has democratic integrity and is representative. We can stand here all night and debate the problems with GMs and assemblies. There are problems with both systems. Yeah.
I think it's obviously we've got the referendum, but if you look around the country, you can find every type of democratic model. Some places they work brilliantly, and the exact same model will work very poorly elsewhere. It all comes down to engagement involving them feeling that they can actually make a difference, have their say, and see a result from it. For the sort of guild assembly referendum, it's if you read the whole document as I have, and probably about 5 other people, it's a bit of a confusing read. It doesn't go too well together, and it's not really had any expert advice put onto it. We need to have far more massive open consultation, which does mean engagement. As Ben said, it's a chicken egg situation. but I don't feel we've tried hard enough this year to get people involved, and we really need to get people involved in guild democracy so they can feel that they're making that difference.
I think with that, you know, GMs have almost acted as engagement with themselves. You know, we've run a system this year that has been completely undemocratic, but in the fact that we forced students to go along. But on the flip side, in doing that, we forced them to view a system which is most of the time farcical and just doesn't work. And in itself, the fact that most students that are forced to turn up to general meetings halfway through are completely bored out of their skulls, don't want to be there, are discussing issues that don't affect them, and on a whole, we'll probably sit there thinking this is utterly ridiculous, and why isn't there something better than this that is running the guild? So in a way, general meetings and the fact that they are so ridiculous have acted as consultation in themselves.
Well, for me, that's worrying that we're rushing forward into reform that's not been properly thought out yet.
I would argue with that it's very
finish?
difficult in the... Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, it's said it's not been properly thought out, and it's something we need to look far more into. We need to get proper advice from the NUS because they know their stuff on this, and they have dozens of models that we can get and build on and make specific to Aberystwyth. Shouldn't just rush ahead because the current system isn't working. We actually, because, well, we don't know how the new one's going to work. As I said, we need to see what happens, but it's something that more care and thought should have been put into.
I mean, there's always the problem with GMs that if you can get 50 students in the room, so you bring down your club, you can force a vote anyway. What I'm worried about with the assembly model is that rather than bringing down 50 students, people will tell their friends to stand and we'll just get them elected. Because if we can't even get 100 students in a room, how are we going to get students involved enough to elect 89 representatives?
Because you get...
Yeah, I think I'm for the assembly, but I don't know if I'm for it right now, because I do think sometimes we're kind of putting the cart before the horse in some way, because I do think engagement is crucial. I think that you'd have one or two of these assemblies and then I think you'd lose a lot of interest. I was backing it wholeheartedly, but I have since rethought about it, and I do think that like I said, you will get all the people going initially, and then you'd have to buy elections and things like that because people will stop going. I do think a way of making GMs more democratic would be to put motions online and get people to vote online for the motions. And also to do a priority ballot, because I hear a lot of complaint about the order, the way motions are discussed at these GMs. So if you get the students to decide what order these are put in and how they're discussed, I think that would be definitely more democratic.
Okay, let's move on. Right, we're going on to a second sort of category of question, which is less about explicit guild policy, but much more about the kinds of political character that we want to see in our elected representatives. So the kind of questions I'm asking are how they view politics in the guild, how they view the electorate, how they think the various different institutions and bodies that make up this university should interact and so on and so forth. So the next question is for Richard, if I'm correct. Okay. So the question is, a significant proportion of the people who run for guild sabbatical positions are members of political parties. Is this something with which we should be concerned?
Yeah, I admit I am a member of a political party. If you want to know which one, ask me afterwards. It should be quite apparent though if you've ever looked me up on Facebook. But honestly, Aberystwyth, compared to almost any other student union in the country, is very apolitical. When you go to our student unions, you will see the political parties out campaigning with the logos all over the posters, all over the place. It's something we've managed to keep out of Aberystwyth, which I'm very glad, as party politics I don't think has doesn't have a place to play in student politics at this level. Even nationally it doesn't really, because we should be reflecting the concerns of the students. There's something else, but I've forgotten it.
So, I think if I am elected, I'm elected to represent you. My own personal political beliefs have nothing to do with that. And that's why I am no longer a paid-up member of any political society. When I took the decision to run, in fact, when I took the decision to run for IPS president, because I wanted to be politically neutral there, I cancelled my membership with the political movements that I was associated with. I think impartiality, the professional impartiality in a president is extremely important, because then that makes me approachable to anyone from a political spectrum.
I agree, and I think it's quite interesting that those of us who are standing here from political parties are not declaring, and I think that says a lot. But I also think that it to some extent highlights the problems with engagement, in that you are getting mainly political party affiliates standing, really. I think that says a lot about the fact that we're not engaging with the general and the sort of the majority of the student population, really. I mean, with the sort of regard to societies, I find it really shocking that there are mainly political candidates stood up here instead of members of societies on the whole.
I think what you're inferring there, though, is we stand because we have an interest in politics. I'm not standing because of that.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
I'm standing because there are issues in Aberystwyth.
I agree, but what I mean is that if we are standing because we are the only ones interested in politics, then we need to be making sure that the general student body are getting interested in guild politics and bringing themselves forward too.
They're probably mostly politics students as well. Sorry, they're probably mostly politics students as well, rather than other departments.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. We're failing to sort of engage with the general body there.
Probably
really.
just like interject here with the fact that I throw everything else that everyone else is trying to say here, seeing as though I'm stood here as independent and completely not political in any way other than the fact that of the politics of the guild. Even though I think throwing around the term politics, you know, you could break down the rhetoric of the term politics within the student movement, because I'm not entirely sure that it should be called politics, because it just offends the sort of engagement side of things by turning more people off. And neither am I a politics student, because I was also a geography student. And I think it's the point you raised about the fact that we're quite an apolitical guild is good on one hand, but on the other hand, from a sort of outside perspective, it also leads to people standing, yes, without sort of highlighting if they're a member of political parties, but is that a good thing, or does it mean that they're sort of not highlighting it because they think that it will put students off electing them, and they're actually still standing on party political points, but just not telling students because they think that would put students off? If that's the case, then being sneaky about party politics is just about as actually standing out there and saying that you're affiliated to a party.
Like I've said, I've cancelled my membership. I did that 3 months ago when I was elected IPS president. You know, I think standing on a political ticket would be wrong. I'm here, if elected, I'm here to represent all of you, whatever your politics or non-politics are and is. Yeah, that's it really.
Yeah, I mean, I am a member of a political party. I'm not going to stand here and lie to you all. And if you come and ask me again, the same as Richard, I will tell you what I'm a member of. However, I am standing here as a sort of someone who can be impartial. And if you look at my manifesto, you'll see my points and my sort of my manifesto is not led or leaning any way in particular. It's just directed at general student issues. For example, my sort of pledge to bring top-up machines to the computer rooms, that is not a political issue. And they are the issues that matter to students, the sort of practical issues, as opposed to the ideological issues that we're really getting into here, to be honest.
Yeah. So if you were at the hustings earlier, I think you'd have found it pretty hard to actually find a massive amount of difference in a lot of the policy areas, because, well, it's their general agreement, and I said party politics doesn't come into this. My party I'm a member of tried telling me to do anything in relation to guild. I go, what on earth are you trying? It's none of their business.
Can I ask you a quick follow-up question, if you don't mind? I haven't done that before. I think it's important. There's been an issue raised with me by a former guild presidential candidate and a former guild president of the idea of careerism in politics, in guild politics. And the reason why this question might be significant is the possibility of people using guild politics as a platform upon which to build a political career. And I'm happy for anyone to address that question.
Right, I'm going to put this one to bed. I am not here as a careerist at all. I've actually delayed for a year, if I get elected, a £29,000 a year job as an army officer to stand, because I think there are issues in this town with housing and mental health.
Can I just interject there?
Please do.
I think it's quite interesting to look at the term careerist. It's a word that I hate, and I think there's two sides of career. The term careerist. There's like Mike said, the political careerist, but at the same time, you know, I'd almost class myself as a careerist, not a political careerist, but the fact that at some point in my life I would like a job or career, and you yourself have just mentioned that you were offered a job or career, and I think it's a very weird term, and you know, I tend to sort of disregard whenever it's used, because I think it's a really flimsy term and a flimsy attack that people use on people, but at the same time, people standing on political sort of stance and trying to use it as a platform is wrong in itself, but I just don't like the term career.
Well, as I was saying, yeah, I'm standing because, before Ben interjected, sorry. I'm standing because there are things wrong, and I want to fix them, and I think I've got some solutions.
Okay, Kay,
I agree with Ben. I think the term career is flung around too often in a derogatory way, and I think, you know, I'm a trainee teacher, so no, I've got no interest in being involved in politics in a career sense. I want to be a teacher. That's what I've come to university for. That's what I want to do. I'm running to be your president because I care. I genuinely want to make a difference. As cheesy as that might sound.
Richard,
So.
do you want to finish?
Yeah, so careerism. It's one of the things that initially made me very angry with NUS when I sort of got involved with that, in that you have people who have been sabbatical officers for over 6 years. They've just been jumping positions from their guild, from their union to NUS, and you can move around positions in the NUS without any problem. You just keep changing positions and getting re-elected, because the way it works, it's pretty easy to do if you're in the right, with the right people, basically. But at the same time, you get people who sort of have been in a few positions and are very good. Anyway, so honestly, like my friend John Antonazzi, guild president for the last 2 years, he's now running for NUS Wales. Does that make him careerist? Well, not really, because he was quite literally forced into running, but he's gained a lot of support because everyone knows that he tries bloody hard.
Right, that's off the topic of it. Next one is for Ben. Ben, brace yourself for this one, okay? This is slightly out there. But it's a really important question because it plays into the whole thing about how we refer to ourselves as students and what students should be thinking about political time. What do you understand by the term student radicalism? And is it something you feel should be encouraged?
Interesting. Student radicalism, I don't know, it's a strange term, as many of you are probably aware. Aber Students Against Cuts recently became Aber Radical Forum, and I think the whole term of having radical students on campus is something that's really beneficial. I think it highlights, I don't know, if there's people there who want to sort of address issues that they see are in the university sector and in the university that they're a part of, and they feel passionately about that, then go ahead. And I think what I've always argued with radical groups is the way in which they go about it, in a sense that almost puts a lot of other students off. I think there's almost a way there's room for radicalism or student radicalism to be done in a way in which encompasses the views of all students, and I think it just needs to be, it's something that should happen because it shows that the myth of apathetic students sort of isn't entirely true. But at the same time, I think there's also scope for students to be radicalised, if you like, even if they never thought they would have been before. If any of that makes sense.
I agree. I think it depends how radical we're talking as well here, because I mean we don't want to encourage a radical that's going to, you know, radical's got so many connotations. We don't want to encourage anything that's going to hurt or harm anyone. I mean, things like we saw the occupation last year, which was obviously quite a touchy subject, but I mean they did no harm to anyone. They didn't really hurt anyone or anything like that, and I'd say that was quite radical compared to mainstream politics. So to an extent, yeah, we should be encouraging certain actions, definitely, because we want to see students that actually stand up for their rights. We don't want to see students that just sit back and let things happen on a national level that are going to affect them and not do anything about it. But it's something that needs to be measured.
Well, what do you mean by radical? Sort of radical of one decade is the next decade's moderate. It really is. So if you look back sort of through the student union history, you see sort of first of all, sort of women's rights and right to vote, there's LGBT rights. And they've all become mainstream ideas now, but they all started off as radical ideas that were frankly frowned upon by the majority of society. You need radical students to sort of push the envelopes. You may not always agree with them, you may sometimes get really angry at them, the way they act, but they're needed. You need them to help create the healthy debate of any proper democracy. They're a vital part of it, just as the people who don't want anything to change are.
Radicalism is the driving force to change and has been a massive element in social change throughout human history. So yeah, of course it's important to have radical students and people that say, no, I think this is wrong and I'm going to protest and I'm going to organise something and we've got 500 people behind us and we're going to do this. That's brilliant. You know, that's bringing people together on an issue and saying, no, let's change it. So yeah, I support student radicalism. as long as it's done in a peaceful way, obviously. Yeah, no throwing petrol bombs or something. But, you know, it's important that we have these people who actually stand up and go, no, this is wrong and I want to change it, or yes, this is right and this is something we've got to push. Yeah, I'll support you if you want to protest about something.
Can I just expand on what I was... the sort of idea, I agree that you need this core group of people, but I think at the same time, we need to understand that radical is basically students standing up and saying that they think something that's going on is wrong, and I think there's almost it's sort of there's a need for educating people about what radical actually is, and what I was trying to say earlier is you know, if somebody who you know, is a radical student and is going out there and is fighting against the cuts that are happening, there's sort of an ownership on them to go to you know, somebody in the rugby club and say, these cuts that are happening in the university, they're really going to affect you. You might not have a space to practice before, and then, you know, suddenly you get a radical rugby player, you know, and they may not call themselves that, and you know, people might not see them as that, but if they are stood up and fighting against something that might be cut for them, they are in a way radical, and it's about educating people about, you know, what these terms mean, and sort of getting everyone involved, I think.
Okay, next question then for Kate. Kate, it's pretty much following on from that, and it's a short question. Would you ever seriously consider taking the students out on strike?
I would, yeah. I'm a member of several trade unions because, like I said, I'm a teacher, a trainee teacher, and last year, sorry, I have been on strike. And it is something that can, you know, make a point, and I would encourage students to go on strike if it's something they feel passionately about. I mean, we've got NUS Action Week coming up, I believe, and on the Wednesday there is an encouraged walkout. And it is something I would encourage, because sometimes you've got to do things like that to make a stand. I mean, our voices are not always heard. Let's just be straight about it. I mean, like I said earlier, this sort of attack that's being launched on students by the current government, there needs to be action taken against them. And better to do it in a peaceful way, like striking, than to petrol bomb, has been said a lot. So, yeah, I would, yeah.
Yeah, no. Again, this is an issue of who am I to tell you to go on strike? Unless you tell me that we need to strike as a students' union. That democracy there. I want to give decision powers to you, because that's what we are. We're a democracy. So if you mandate me to do something, I'll do it. I will, if you mandate me, support a strike and encourage other people to be on strike as well.
I think the key term that people are using is the fact that as a guild, we should be encouraging students to go out and strike if we think there is something that they should be striking and walking out about. But at the same time, we shouldn't be stood here forcing people to go out and walk out and sort of take themselves away from their education, which they are paying for at the end of the day. And if some people decide they don't want to participate in those sort of actions, and that's fair enough. We need to be an organisation that is encouraging as a movement against the vicious cuts that Westminster is making, but at the same time allowing people to make their own decisions on these things as well.
I agree. I think but the Guild definitely need to facilitate these sort of things. So I agree with you, yeah. But we need to lead the way with them, yeah. Definitely.
Well, as has been said, it's at the end of the day, it comes down to what the students want. Honestly, I don't really look forward to any strike, to be honest. There have been strikes over the last few years. We're trying to support in strikes. I haven't, but it's up to the members at the end of the day. And if they vote to have one, it's the president's job to do as much as possible to make it a success, a peaceful one, but to get the voice out there. You'd have to try and do as much to stop it as possible, because strikes basically say you've reached the end of the line and negotiations have failed. But you can't rule it out completely because, well, stuff happens.
Okay, 2 questions left then to allow us to finish on an even keel. The first question, the second last question is going to James. James, it is often said that the student population in Britain is irredeemably apathetic. Is this a fair judgment in your opinion? And if so, how would you explain that apathy?
I disagree with that the student population is irredeemably apathetic. I've been round almost every student residence in the last 5 days and spoken to countless students. Many of them didn't know there was an election, but all of them want to take a part, or most of them want to take, be part of this guild and the other services it provides. So I don't think student activism is, students are irredeemably apathetic. I think what it is they don't see the issues that they perhaps need to see in Aberystwyth. They don't get passionate about the things that they should do. For example, the stuff I'm talking about is housing. There is a lot of passion about that. People are angry. It's now finding a way that we can communicate and channel that anger and that passion into doing something constructive.
Yeah, when you look at students as a whole, there is an apathy problem. You can't say there isn't. It's like when you look at how students vote, they've got the lowest voting percentage of any part of the population. In age terms anyway. There is an issue, but it's not always been the case. Students have been involved in the past. The big problem is when you talk to students, why aren't you voting? It's because they don't think their vote will make a difference. They don't think they can change things. Even though when you do go and vote, you make a difference. If you get involved in the system, you can make a difference, and we need to sort of help people realise that actually they do matter, and they can change things if they go and use their vote and get involved in all the other ways as well.
And leading on from the last question, they can change things if we get 500 people together and go and
Yeah.
protest and stuff like that. But it's finding the medium of activity that people want to do. So whether it's protest, whether it's whatever, I'm open to suggestions. Honestly.
I mean, when it's something that students are passionate about, they definitely get involved. I mean, look at the marches that took place in London last year, or the before against the tuition fee rises. Then things like that shows that students can get involved and will get involved when it's something they believe in, something they're passionate about. I mean, we took other students down there, down to London, and it just shows that although I'd say there is a sense of apathy among students, and that's not the fault of the guild, and to some extent it's not the fault of the guild, because it's a general feeling in Britain at the moment. There's a general apathy towards politics. I mean, and underneath sort of the cuts again, I know we've mentioned this a lot, but the cuts they're seeing at the moment, I mean, it's not going to get much better. I mean, people are still going to think, oh, we don't have a role to play, and our vote makes no difference. So I'd say there is, but I don't think it's irredeemable, because I think we can make a difference. We just have to encourage people to vote and actually have their say, really.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's interesting that you mentioned the cuts, and I think what we can find is quite a strong correlation between the introduction of fees and the sort of decrease in student participation. The fact that you look back into records in Aberystwyth RAG was when people weren't paying fees was one of the biggest RAGs in the country, and one holder residence alone was classed as the second biggest independent charity in the country, and that sort of thing was going on. But I think students, you introduce fees, and this is the sort of thing that happened. People do sit there in lectures and work out how much each lecture is going to cost. And when you're thinking about that, people are purely going to try and concentrate on their education and panic about the fact that they're not getting value for money, which is a horrendous situation to be in. And I think we sort of need to break through that, and there's a whole term about added value degrees and all that sort of thing. But I think you can students need to realise that there's a lot they can do by getting engaged and stopping the sort of apathy trend that is driving through the UK, and getting back engaged with student union politics across the country. But I think it's quite a hard struggle to battle with.
I think on a small scale, and as a guild, what we can do is, whichever of us is elected, is ensure that we do achieve our pledges, and ensure we do work towards what we say we're going to do, and show that it does matter who you vote for, because who you vote for will ultimately be what dictates your university and your union.
Yeah, I'll just add on that, even if you vote for the losing candidate, it shows your feeling. It shows that a lot of people care about what that candidate was talking about, that you really should probably listen to this segment of students that didn't put you as their first preference.
Okay, I'm going to ask the final question, and it's going to be to Richard. Richard, why should the students vote for you ahead of any of these other candidates?
Well, passion and anger, basically. It's when I see a problem, it starts me thinking, how can I make this better? What can be done? It's like my first year here, I arrived, I was told there's a politics society. There wasn't one, so I started one. It's mostly been going well, though it's had some problems recently, unfortunately. But you get involved, I start doing things. I try and get other people on board, because it's no use if it's just me. You need to get everyone else on board as well to get it done. You'll know what I'm up to, you know what I'm working on.
To push you a little bit on that though, Richard, this is ahead of the other candidates.
Yeah.
So can you sort of do a compare and contrast
I don't know if I really want to mainly.
Negative campaigning rules are suspended.
Well, no, even if they're suspended, it's for me that's getting far negative. For me, it's the fact that you know what the guild's up to. I'd make sure that you're always felt able to come and tell me what was on your mind without fear of being told by someone, oh, you shouldn't be asking that, or I'll just let them get on with the job. To me, that's not right. I want to make sure we have a guild as a full, transparent, open democracy. That's something I passionately believe in. I want students to be involved in the guild again. I want students to sort of know what's going on without having to have someone knock on their door and tell them. It's basically passion and anger is my driving force.
Wouldn't it be like quite a crucial part of the guild is the fact that a lot of the student officers are stuck in offices, and you said that you wouldn't want people going and knocking on students' doors. I think one of the biggest things that the guild officers can do, I'm sad that I haven't managed to do it as much as I would want this year, is actually go out and speak to students. That is, pretty much the whole reason why we are here. That's I couldn't get out of and speak to students and hold the residents as much as I would like. We tried it, and unfortunately the hectic calendar sticks to it. But that is the reason I started, a SAB radio show to try and engage people that way. And speaking to students is crucial to this job.
Yeah, as you say, you get very busy, so you can't go out knocking on doors all year long just because of the time it takes. Just knocking on the door and waiting, someone doesn't answer, it's a minute or so gone. That's why you need to make sure there are many different avenues of communication as possible.
I'd go and knock on doors.
Honestly, I'd go around as well.
I would go round every student accommodation in the evenings, and I would talk to students.
With the advantage of being an incumbent, I think having tried that, you would find it a hell of a lot more difficult than just saying.
I'll make the time.
That's good for you.
I think there are other ways of doing it as well. Like one of my pledges to make sure there's sabbatical surgeries where students can actually, you set a few hours aside a week and you actually just sit there and bring it out of the offices, bring them into the union, get them to sit there and just have general questions.
That no one really comes into the union.
Well, advertise it better and make sure people are aware of what's going on.
Something to fix, something that needs to be fixed. We need people coming in the guild if it's going to be successful, because at the moment it's.
I mean, freshers need to be aware straight away when they get here what's going on. And I mean, I'm not saying that the SABs haven't tried to do that already, but it's obviously not effective enough. I mean, the amount of freshers I've spoken to who actually have no idea what the guild is. And let's be honest, it sounds like some sort of mythical creature, to be honest, and that's not anything to do with it. That's your fault, it's just a silly name. But I think we need to make sure that the freshers are aware of it immediately. I mean, give them cards. Actually go into the unions, into the residences, into the meetings straight away and say, I'm your president and I'm your student support officer. Just make sure they're aware of who you are.
I think one of the confusing things for students is the fact that for some bizarre reason we are called a guild. I've asked myself this question on numerous occasions this year. Apparently the reason we're called a guild is because we used to be made up of several student unions, but the fact that we've got a commercial arm that calls itself a student union and then a democratic arm that seems to call itself a guild, even though theoretically we're all the guild of students, it makes no sense to me that we're not just called Aberystwyth Students' Union. And I think half the issue is, in fact, the best example.
I don't think the issue is a branding issue. I think it's
going
out and meeting people.
With a fantastic example of this, which will highlight what I'm trying to say. I was stood in reception a couple of weeks ago as I was going to give a tour to students, to freshers, and one of the other ambassadors came in to give a tour and stood at the bottom of the steps and went, this area here, this club space and that bar area over there, that's all the student union. And then you go through the doors at the back and then the guild of students is behind them. So I think that is the mentality, unfortunately, that we have, the fact that we've got student union and a guild of students, and no one seems to understand that they're one and the same, because across the country we've got student unions where we seem to have this, like you say, mythical thing in Aberystwyth.
The amount of students I've had ask me if it's something to do with World of Warcraft is unbelievable.
Sorry?
You wanted to disagree with something?
Well, I sort of lodged my disagreement. I don't think it's about the name, or I don't think changing a sign matters. It's about telling students actually what a guild provides. And I've said I'll go round and I will talk to people.
Honestly, I think we've got partly answered the question that I could bring up, the main theme of my campaign, and it seems to be all we're talking about now.
I'd like to see some sabbatical sort of socials as well, coffee mornings, things like that, where you get the SABs out giving coffee and tea to students and just introducing yourself.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, 3 things before we finish. Right? First things first. If there's any issues that have been raised during the course of this debate that you guys really feel you have something to say on, the Debating Society will now come to session and will be starting off with private members' time, which means that any person in this room, including the candidates, can stand up, say, I want to propose a motion on whatever that is, and stand up and speak for 3 minutes on it, and argue for it, and then other people will stand up in proposition or opposition to that motion. And maybe some of the candidates will remain behind, and you can have a debate with them as students about everything that's gone on. After that, we'll be going, what time is it? 9 o'clock normally, Susanna? We'll be heading up to Bernamlog, which is the wonderful student pub up at the top of the hill, which none of you probably know about, or at least very few of you. We can all go in there and enjoy a wonderful, very Welsh pub atmosphere. But last but not least, what I really, really hope is that with this debate, which let's not forget, is the first time that any of these candidates have ever done anything like this before, and the first time, as far as I or any other person who's currently in Aberystwyth University is aware, is the first time this has ever been done by any guild candidates at all. Let's hope, for those of you particularly in first year, that what we're doing here is starting a tradition of proper political engagement and policy critique that will allow us to elect the best candidates and allow students to be most informed. But finally, and last but not least, given all of that, I think we owe a big round of